And I love how he lands the plane in verse 7. He says, but this is all loss, after he's built this incredible resume. So guys, let's start today talking about the resumes that we could put our confidence in, what that looks like. And, my kids laugh all the time. Dad, everybody, you've done all these great things. And you know what? The Lord's given me some great things to do, but guess what? If my confidence is in all that stuff that's on my resume, that's a tragedy. That's absolute tragedy. And that's exactly what as well, that whatever we've gained, we need to throw that in the loss column. So Greg, thank you. Guys, let's react to Greg's question. What about the resume? What about the pedigree? Why is that such at the end of our days, such an unimportant thing compared to the value of knowing Christ? Love to hear your comments on that.
Our TGIW in Overland Park, Howard Russell is a member, and he gave a talk 2-3 years ago, and he said, I was born on third base, and that's a sports. When you get to third base, you got all kind of options. Steal home, you can come home on a bunt, you can an infield grounder. If there's only one out, you're in. You score. But what he meant was he was kind of born into a little wealth. He went back to his grandfather. We're 4 or 5 generations of KU graduates. My goodness, KU. I mean, what else can you say? I'm a K-State guy, so I have to bring that up. But anyway, hey Greg, how's that cowboy stuff working out for you these days? You did a great job, and that was such a frontal reality. I mean, you get sucked in there, and you're hopeless almost. That's all you think about, and keep hoping, I guess.
Yeah.
But some of us you might be born on first base, second base, or third base, but most of us, a lot of us, have advantages from the get-go, and that starts it, and then pride kicks in, and pride's the umbrella here, of course. Good subject, and need to preach it almost every day.
Thanks, Jerry. Jerry, I will say this, because you probably haven't heard it, but the guys who are around me all year have heard it.
Oh, yeah.
As a Cowboys fan, my mantra is keep your expectations low and your loyalty high. And I say, I know my Chiefs friends understand that because they went through it for 50 years. I'm just a little more than halfway through that. So low expectations, high loyalty.
Yeah. You don't bet the farm on them.
That's right. That's right.
And Jerry, what's interesting about his list, his resume, and even what you referred to about being on third base, the one that's remarkable to me on the list is when he says, "I'm blameless." One of the translations translate that he says, "I'm perfect. I have no flaws." And you talk about the epitome of pride. When you look at your life and say, "Man, I am perfect." I mean, you have announced, you've shaken your fist in the air at the world, at God, everything, and say, "You know what? It's all about me.
Yeah.
It's all about me, and I see no flaw in me. I am blameless. I am perfect." And boy, if the passage stopped there, man, I'd be looking around for a lightning bolt.
Yeah.
But man, he quickly turns the tables and says, "No, that's, I'm not perfect." And you want to talk about perfect? It's about Jesus, and he points us right back to Jesus. But yeah, Paul has got quite the argument here, and I love that he did it. I love that he cited it because he blows it up. He absolutely blows it up. So love it.
Well, the story is before and after. I mean, there is no greater testimony than before and after. And he's got it. I mean, he was the best of the worst, and he became the greatest writer in the New Testament. The before and after that's the story that works.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And guess what? It worked for Paul. It works for us too. And I was just reminded yesterday, and as many great things I've done, some things triggered yesterday about how bad I was before Christ. Woo! Man, Greg, you would not be in awe of me. No one would be in awe of me. You'd be saying, man, I'm glad I'm not that guy. But that's what Christ, he brings transformation. He literally transforms us. He makes us into a new creation. And the old has passed away and the new comes. And Paul is a living example of a brand new man. And the key is in Christ. In Christ. Other guys.
Hey, Rod, was teaching a lesson last week, and I broke my elbow back in 2009. And the short version is screws, plates, rehab. And I worked that arm really, really hard to get it back to the way it was before I was broke. And when all that rehab and all that pain and all that stuff was over with, to this day, I still cannot completely straighten out my left arm. So what I mean by that, I mean, I broke it. It's never, ever going to be the same again. It doesn't matter how hard I work, how much I work, how sincere I work. That arm is never, ever going to be the same again. So I've got a pretty good spiritual resume. Greg can attest to that. But you know what? In the words of the famous motivator, Matt Foley, it doesn't amount to jack squat without Jesus. I broke it. It's over with. I have no hope.
Yeah. That's good. You got a great example right there with your elbow, right there, Steve.
Right there.
Anybody else?
I have a thought. It kind of ties in with Greg's low expectations, high loyalty. I think there's probably a good spiritual similarity here. Paul's expectations were high according to his earthly resume. But once he'd encountered Jesus, he realized that's rubbish. It's garbage. I count it loss. Now, low expectations, no expectations from my earthly resume, but my loyalty to Jesus is where it's at. And that star on the Dallas Cowboys helmets, you could think of that as the bright morning star that Jesus is going to give us. So how's that for a thought?
There you go. That's good. Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
Greg, great as usual. Thank you. You certainly built a huge expectation for your teaching, but you've excelled yet again. And I look at this and I look at where Paul starts in these 3-4 verses, talking about pride, your resume, who you are, where you've been. That's all about pride. But after his change, after Christ got hold of him, it becomes humility. And this is a great illustration of what it means to be prideful and what it means to have humility. So, been there, done it, you name it, been there, done it. I was 58 before I came to Christ. So I've got a long before resume.
Yeah.
A lot more than Paul. But this is just great. And the way of looking at it. Okay, guys, let's go through your profit column, but then let's go through your loss column. And seeing those things and just coming to mind and realizing and how to be so thankful that Christ eventually got hold of me. Great work. Thanks, Greg.
Well said, Mike. Yeah, we certainly echo that as well. Anybody else want to jump into this really cool conversation?
First question in the discussion questions is, why does Paul cite his religious pedigree? what I was thinking about that is that, and sometimes in discussions, especially with Paul, he could speak to the Jewish people, and that gave him credibility that he wouldn't otherwise have. And another version of that, as we today, as Christians, we need to, there's a method of evangelism that says, make a friend, be a friend, and bring your friend to Christ. So, excuse me, you get credibility by making a friend and being a friend. And just a sort of a different type of example, my older son figured that he could get wherever he wanted to go by, even if he didn't have a high school diploma. Well, a couple of years after he left high school, he found out that that was not the case. And he did get a high school diploma, and as a real high school diploma, and has had a great career. But we had told him, you need that piece of paper to get your foot in the door sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Paul's saying here.
Mm. Larry, it reminds me of my days when I worked with FCA. Of course, I'm around high profile guys. You talk about, all pros and all stars and, just legendary coaches, just, again, very impressive people to be around. But I'll never forget what Harold Reynolds said to me one time. He actually said it to a group of people. It wasn't me privately. But he says, I'm not and of course he was in his day, very, a superstar baseball player, all-star, had the resume. He says, I'm not a baseball player who happens to be a Christian. He says, I'm a Christian who happens to be a baseball player. He understood his identity. He understood that I'm not defined by my resume, by all the things, the accolades. I'm defined by who I am in Christ. And he just happened to be a baseball player. That was super secondary on his list, but he was given elevation. He was given opportunities. He was definitely one of those guys. I'll use Jerry's illustration. He was on third base. He was on third base. All kinds of advantages, but he counted all that as loss for the sake of knowing Christ. He understood who he was and whose he was. And I tell you what, the humility he had was it was just so refreshing to be around, because he could have touted his stuff. And back in those days, he was very reluctant to even tell people. And I was running around with him in my Seattle days, hey, I'm Harold Reynolds with the Seattle Mariners, I'm an all-star player, No, he was just Harold. He's just, he's there to serve. He's there to give his life away. He came in without fanfare, with all the accolades. He just was being himself, and he was just super humble. And it was awesome to be around and be reminded he was not a baseball player first. He was a Christian. So it's good.
Rod, you knew Coach Landry too, didn't you? I mean,
Oh,
you
I
had met
did.
him.
Oh, yeah. Incredibly humble man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've told about this anecdote before, and Greg knows this, I'm sure, but someone said to him just before he was about to get fired, "Oh, you're worried about Tom Landry?" He said, "Don't worry about Tom Landry. That job is at best fourth on his list of things that are important to him."
That's right. And that's the way he was. Incredible, humble servant. Very, 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 I'm just reminded how, what an awesome man of God he was, and humility just oozed out of him.
Hey, Rod, were you there? Were you there that night?
I was, and that was fun to see what George Schultz did that night. That was really special.
Look at that dark hair, skinny, young. This was
That's before and after.
that is definitely, this was May of '97 is when that happened. That's crazy. That's nuts.
All right. You're going to make me. So there's,
Oh, yeah.
there's another,
There's a young Rod.
there's a young Rod with Coach Landry. It might have been even the same year, same week, same day as yours, but
Yeah,
anyway,
it may have been.
there you
Trying to see what tie he had on there.
go. Before and after, before and after.
Yeah, we both had dark hair. That was cool.
All right. Anybody else want to add to this great conversation?
Or show pictures.
Yeah, Greg, as usual, do a great job on breaking down scriptures. So thank you, brother. I think for me, I've shared so many times, my first 30 years, teachings were false about salvation. So based on traditions, based on religion, based on works, right? So it's been God's been transforming me since age 30 to understand these truths. And again, you guys talked about, starts with the reality of a broken spirit. And Psalm 52:17, the sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. These, oh God, you will not despise. So it brings us to that point where now we can start to learn, start to break those old understandings and to recognize it's not us, it's Christ alone that transforms us.
Amen.
And earlier in that passage in 51:6 is so powerful. David says, behold, you desire truth in the inward parts, and in the inward part, you will make me to know wisdom. So as for me, as I'm spending time in his word and breaking down, things of my past, right? Because the flesh is still present, still wants to have its way. Okay, God, give me the truth about those things that I still haven't surrendered,
Right.
so that I can be fully devoted and fully complete to finish this life well. So I'm not attached to the things I think are important that are outward, that I want to please man. I want to please you and you alone.
Wow.
In the verses that Scott just quoted, Psalm 51:17 and then Psalm 51:6. So thank you, Scott, for that. That's truth right there for us. Love it. Anybody else?
I had a thought about circumcision. This may not be where anybody would think we go, but that circumcision is that tiny little piece of flesh, the foreskin, that it's symbolic, I suppose, of getting rid of the flesh, getting rid of that fleshly resume that Paul was talking about. That little piece of flesh, so that you can walk in the Spirit. That is, we're called to die to our flesh, and that foreskin is perhaps symbolic of that. And the other symbolism that I think comes out is, if you make it to third base, again, on your earthly resume, no one's going to get you home except Jesus Christ.
That's correct. Good point.
That's good, Jim. Yeah, there's rich truth there. Then thanks for bringing that out, Jim, for us. Anybody else? All right, gents. Well, obviously, great passage, great insights. Cannot wait, Greg, for you to go walk us through verse 7 and 8, which again, that's thanks for leading us to that truth, because that's where he just throws a knockout punch at us, at the flesh, and all the things we put confidence in. He just puts that thing on its rear right there with verse 7. So cannot wait for that piece next time. And that's coming up.
I'm looking forward to that too.
In about a month. Greg will be up, I think it's February 28, March 1. So exactly a month away, 4 weeks away, Greg will be doing that. So thank you, Greg. Hey, guys, thanks for being part today. God bless you.
Thanks, Greg.
Well done,
Hey,
everybody.
you bet you guys.
Yep.
See you later. Have a great day.